Our panel today is Choose Women, Why Women Need to Invest in Women. And all you women who are talking in the back, you need to be quiet. Wendy thinks she can out-woo everybody, but I know I can do it. Woo! I was a cheerleader in high school. Sad but true. Okay, I'm going to very quickly introduce our panelists. I'm not going to go through their bios. You can Google them. You can look them up on LinkedIn. I highly recommend that you do. Right here next to me is Shannon Dellimore. Shannon is the founder of a company called GLAMGLOW. Her story is incredible. She did not start out in the beauty industry whatsoever. Next to her, Eileen Murray from Bridgewater. Eileen's been in the financial services business for a couple years. Kara Goldin, right next to her, the founder of Hint Water, which I have been the beneficiary because my friend Margaret Detweiler has lots of events. There's always Hint Water there at 2-night events, so thank you for that. And then at the far end, Keith has the most beautiful eyes, so if you can get up close and check them out. Keith Agoda, he is from a firm called Producers Market, which is doing really interesting stuff in the world of blockchain in terms of sourcing and agriculture. So we're just going to kick it off right now. Panelists, esteemed panelists, tell me, why do women need to choose women? Who wants to take it first? Keith.
All right, we're going to have the man answer first.
Why do we need to invest in women?
First, it's an honor to be here, and as a man, I must say that women seem to be way more advanced than us, and so I'm here always to listen and learn, and I encourage other men to do the same.
Great.
So with our platform, what we want to do is to connect women with other women or women with other entrepreneurs. And what we find with emerging economies in agriculture and rural areas is that women, women tend to be way better managing their money and managing the capital resources that are received from lenders. So as we look to empower entrepreneurs in developing nations, we look at women entrepreneurs, and also with our platform creating the tools so women around the world can support women entrepreneurs. And when it comes to the organic industry where we're focused, it's been moms who've really driven the industry. Moms have been the ones that were most conscious about where their food came from and why it's important for their children and their family. Oftentimes the man is pretty dense about that topic, and so we feel there's a lot of opportunities for women to be actually financing and supporting other women and to actually drive the production to fulfill their demands and their needs for their family.
Eileen, you're the official investor on the panel, I would say, so you may see it a little bit differently, but why invest in women now? What's changed?
So first of all, I think the question, I've talked to you about this, I can't imagine not investing in women. And what I mean by that, through my career, I've been asked to make the case for diversity and for women. I've never been asked to make the case for homogeneity, which I find interesting. But I could give you tons of facts and figures in terms of women being 50% of the intellectual capital of the globe. We could go through women, how much, the economic power they hold in our economies. But I think the bottom line is, for companies to do really great, you need diversity of thought. And I believe women bring diversity of thought that's very much needed in the companies we're in. You heard one of the earlier panels that men might be more logical, more decisive, etc. But innovation comes from doing things differently, from being creative, not from being logical. If it was logical, we wouldn't have new creations. So I think women bring a lot to the table. There's a high ROI. And at least from my perspective, I hope in another 20 years, 30 years, we're not talking about why invest in women, but why invest in great people.
Yeah, I would just say that it's not just, I really look at it as why wouldn't you invest in women? And to both of your points, I think that women are seeing problems that are out there and trying to come up with solutions. And like just on our cap table alone, I mean, we have 70% of our investors are women. So the money is definitely out there. It's not necessarily in traditional places like private equity and venture capital, but there's definitely a lot of individual investors that are female that are interested in actually putting their money to work. So I just encourage people and entrepreneurs out there too, that if you're, looking for these, for the money, I mean, don't just say there's no women out there who invest, because they're definitely out there. It's a little tougher to find, and it's getting easier and easier with groups that are forming, that angel groups that are forming to do this, but definitely it's out there.
And I think one of the things that we all know, and Wendy talks so passionately about, is the fact that there are so many women living in poverty, and finding ways to change that, to empower them, to help them grow, I think is super important. We know that, women do invest heavily in the economy, and more we make, the more we spend, whether it's providing for family or for ourselves or whatever it might be, but we do give back heavily to the economy. So empowering women and having them grow and develop, I think, is super important.
Right, so you've all made a really good business case for why we should invest in women, but the harder thing is, how do we do it? What's worked and what hasn't worked? I'll kick it off to you, Eileen.
When I graduated in 1980, I'd like to say I was 12 years old, but I wasn't. But anyways, something like 0.5% of senior positions were held by women. Today, it's between 17 to 20% in the industry I'm in, and I don't know whether to cry or do the happy dance. So some of the things that I think have worked is making a case for the ROI, women just doing a fabulous job and it being a meritocracy. I think those things have worked when you focus on meritocracy. And then the second piece I think hasn't worked as well is to really challenge unconscious biases, and to do that in a nurturing, cooperative way, not in an accusatory way. And so there's lots of different things we've done that have worked well, lots of things that didn't, but without a doubt, we've made progress, but not enough. And so we've got to keep at this. And I think the more and more we look for diversity of thought versus gender or race or religion, I think these problems start to solve themselves. And I'm encouraged that the millennials seem to have a much better attitude towards this than certainly the tail end of the baby boomers that I was in.
Raise your hand if you're a millennial.
I'd like to think I'm a
millennials.
millennial.
The
but-
future is yours.
I also think it's really important, not only from a financial aspect, to invest in women, but also just to empower, be a motivator, be someone that you can, be right there with, to collaborate with. I think if we all come together, not as competitors, but just as collaborators, I think it's so important, because I know I didn't really have anybody to go to when I started GLAMGLOW. I didn't come from the industry, so it was a different time. But if there was kind of a group that I could have went to, that I could have talked to about things, it would have made my journey maybe a little bit easier or more helpful. So I think coming together and just collaborating is important.
Yeah, I believe technology is going to be a big driver for this, as blockchain, distributed ledgers, digital marketing, digital media. As they continue to evolve, it's going to provide tools for greater transparency and traceability, so that we can donate or invest or loan money and buy products with a greater confidence level to the authenticity of where the money's going and where the products have come from. And so with these tools, I think it could engage more people to actually feel confident that their money's going to where their values are aligned.
We know that having children is something that can interrupt, shape, and define a career. Can you talk a little bit about the work-life balance aspect of it, Kara? Like, Kara literally is juggling right now teenagers in California who want to get out because it's really smoky there, and just there are no flights from the West Coast right now. So, here she is speaking to all of you, but half of her, maybe more than half of her, is worrying about her kids right now.
Kind of, but no, they're
they're
teenagers.
teenagers.
They'll be fine. So they also want to figure out another reason to get out of high school for the day. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think that this work-life balance thing is a little overplayed. I can't say that, a week ago I wouldn't have predicted the fires that were going on in San Francisco, and so you just never know what's going to come up. But I think what women do really, really well is just deal with it and deal with like what's in front of them that morning and be able to, really multitask, juggle, however, you want to say it. But I also believe that, as my youngest son is 13, and he told a parent of friend of mine the other day in a carpool. She said, "Oh, where's your mom off to this week?" And he said, "Oh, she's fighting the soda companies. She's doing something really, really important right now." So, I mean, I think that it really, if you're not only following your passion, but doing something that is creating big change in the world, I think that actually resonates with children as well.
Is having it all a myth, Eileen?
I think you can have it all, but I don't know that you can have it all at the same time, at least from my perspective. And, to be totally candid, I'm probably the last person to give advice on work-life balance. It's not one of my great strengths. But I'm fortunate to come from a large family. My sister's here with me today, and I think we're up to 33 or 34 nieces and nephews.
Wow.
And I'm so lucky to have such a wonderful family that we share things and balance things off. But that's something I wouldn't be the right person to give advice on, other than to say that I think if you work really hard, you can move ahead. And if you have to take stops in your career to do other things, you just have to figure out how to ramp back up on. And so I haven't taken any stops, so I don't know.
But you've had people working for you along the way, certainly, who have.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was at Morgan Stanley in 1985, I was responsible for the swaps area, which was new in those days. And 3 of the people that worked for me who were outstanding were on maternity leave. They came back. And I started a work from home for, about a year. And then HR called me and said, "Eileen, we don't have a work from home policy." I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, but I got to get the work done. We better go get one." So I think that, basically, getting into the groove of you have really talented people, and what do you need to do to personalize it to make it work for them, and not get overlooking, what's the right word? Focus too much on these policies. I mean, when I first started work from home more broadly for people, one of the senior managing directors at Morgan Stanley said, "How are you going to know that they're doing their work?" I said, "I have 20,000 people that work for me. I don't know what they're doing now, other than the outcome. So why are you asking me these silly questions? People love it. Let's make it work."
Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah.
And don't forget, everybody, you should be sharing all of these Eileenisms and Shannonisms and Karaisms and Keithisms on social media with all of the hashtags that have been so generously provided to all of you here. More isms. Go ahead, Keith.
On our team, we have 2 single moms, and they work from home part-time, and they're the 2 most responsible people on our team. We have people who don't have that responsibility, who still haven't learned how to clean up their dishes and take care of themselves yet. And so the people that we find to be the most reliable are the ones who have these responsibilities and are able to manage that. And so we're definitely blessed to have that type of energy on our team.
And I mean, work-life balance is not just about women that have children. Everybody has a work-life balance. A single guy, single woman, woman with kids. I mean, a man that stays home with the kids. I mean, it's not just a woman issue any longer. So I think we all have to find a work-life balance, because we all work really hard. We're super dedicated to our jobs, our careers, whatever it is. But you have to have a balance. I mean, I know when I was growing GLAMGLOW, for 3 years, I never saw friends. I barely saw my daughter, who's here today. I mean, it was crazy, because I had no work-life balance. It's not because I was a mom, but I was like so driven and focused on growing this business. But now looking back at it and doing things that I do today, you have to have a balance. You have to be able to give yourself time. Career is super important, but giving yourself time is equally as important, I think.
Cool. I want to talk a little bit about social media, because there's reality, and then there's what we all see on social media, right? The perfectly curated Instagram and Facebook lives, and no more so than the beauty industry, I think, because it's all about presentation. And I'm curious, is it while people are sharing, and we definitely get to see a lot of details of their lives, is it distorting, the value of women?
It's, love-hate relationship. So I was very anti-Instagram for a long time. I literally just signed up for Instagram a couple months ago. I swore I would never do it, because I just think it's even though GLAMGLOW has one, and you have to in business. But it is such a false sense of reality. What you see out there is really not what it is. You've taken 500 pictures, they're super edited, you post it, everybody loves you, you get the few negative comments, it makes yourself feel better, but why is that the case? It shouldn't be the case. One thing that we do see in the beauty industry, which I think is amazing, is a new shift, transparency. People coming on, no makeup on, showing their real skin, showing their real lives, talking about it, doing YouTube, videos, but just being very transparent and not necessarily hiding behind this lens and this false sense of reality. So I think it's an important time right now, and I commend people that are out there that are doing this, because I think it's important, especially having a young daughter, being around a lot of young kids. I don't want my daughter growing up in this world where, you have to be perfect, you have to look a certain way. God forbid you take one picture and you have a wrinkle or you have a pimple, and your self-esteem is just down the tube. So it's definitely a shift, but transparency, I think right now in social media is huge and important, very important.
So when I think about social media, I would say my focus has really changed over the last year. I'm probably more active on Twitter than I am on Instagram. I definitely still post and do other things, but what I really like about Twitter is it's an opportunity for people to really understand who you are as an individual and what you believe in, and I would say that I've had lots of people saying you're inspiring, and it's not just because I have a title, it's like about stuff that I talk about. So I'm very real. Like yesterday afternoon when I'm trying to fly in here and I'm sitting there like hanging out in the air for an extra hour, I was super annoyed and missing an appointment that I was supposed to have in Brooklyn at 4 o'clock that wasn't going to happen. And then, once I landed, I said, okay, I'm fine now. We're back. And so I think people just engage with that, and they get to know you, and then people will say, oh, by the way, I just bought your, hint peppermint at the local store, and go Kara, that's so great. And so that kind of stuff I don't think necessarily happens on these more visual platforms that I really see happening on Twitter. So I always tell, founders and entrepreneurs that, I have really enjoyed it for the last year, just really focusing on getting to understand that platform.
Yeah, and our team has a digital marketing component, and we've made some large investments into Instagram and Instagram assets. And through all of our experiences, what we realized is that you just have to be real. And that's what millennials and I think a lot of the younger generation looks for. They could just feel when something's fake. And so the best thing that we could do is just tell authentic stories, and using high quality, tools, cameras, video helps us, but ultimately it's just telling the true story of what is.
Who has been your biggest mentor? I'll start with Eileen, and what did they teach you in your career?
My biggest mentor has been my mother, and what she taught us was basically, what I'm going to say is going to sound like apple pie, but treat people like you want to be treated. Work as hard as you possibly can. I don't expect anything of you that you can't achieve, which actually really worked well on me to be an overachiever. And put your family first. And so in the work environment, if you actually treat people, I think the way you would like to be treated, every night I go home, I ask myself, would I have wanted to work for me today?
Wow.
And a lot of days I'm like, hell no. You were a complete a-hole. Anyways.
But at least you know that.
Yeah, and then I go in the next day and I'll apologize to someone if I did something wrong. And I think that's really important, because I don't want to be treated that way, and I slip. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. So I'd say my mother, and then John Mack, Ray Dalio have been terrific mentors in different ways. And then I've worked for other people that they were mentors on the things that I never want to do. So I think you can take good things and bad things from people.
Keith, who have been your mentors?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have a lot of people who've helped me understand around integrity and hard work, but I really look at my grandma. Grandma Rose, she was a Holocaust survivor and actually came to Brooklyn with absolutely nothing, started her own store, was one of the first women to start driving in Brooklyn. And when I get into hard moments as an entrepreneur, which is, as you guys know, every day, I'm like, what would my grandma say? She's like, come on, this is nothing. So my grandma's always been a really strong force for being an entrepreneur and in business.
Yeah, so, I've had lots of great, I've always only worked for great bosses, and
Do you choose-
like,
the way that we choose women, do you choose your bosses?
absolutely. So I've only worked for people that I really thought that I was gonna learn from, and I was willing to also put 120% into those people too. But I think it really started with my dad. I mean, very, very long ago, I grew up, I was the last of 5 kids, and my dad never differentiated between, we had 3 girls and 2 boys. My dad never differentiated between any of us and what we could do. We were all athletes, all did our own sports. He was, constantly, saying, so there was a rule in our house, we always had to play a sport. He didn't care what sport it was, but we always had to be doing something. And so it was, I think it really started there where, he was like, great, just go do it, just go out and do it. And, I remember even when I moved to New York City, I grew up in Arizona and I moved to New York, and I was getting a little cold feet early on and trying to find people who would say, you should definitely go do it, definitely go do it. And my dad said to me, so what's the risk of going to New York? And I said, what do you mean, what's the risk? It's like super scary. I grew up in Arizona. I barely know what a subway is. And he said, but how much money is it going to be for you to actually leave New York? You don't have any furniture. Maybe you sign a year lease and you break a lease. What's really the big deal? And, and I always say that to, people that are coming in, right, college graduates, few of them here, that, I'm just always just think about what's the risk, and that's, I would say that really started with my dad, but also just, surrounding myself with people on our team. I don't think that a mentor also needs to be somebody that is, above you in some way. I'm also a big believer that I learn from, lots of people on our team too. I mean, we, from social media, for example, just being able to dig in there and really understand and have them teach and mentor me. I think that it comes in all directions, and be open to that.
Shannon, can you talk a little bit about the mentors in your life? You made a total career switch. Shannon actually was a paralegal before she founded this company, and the story is long and really interesting. It involves Keanu Reeves, so ask her about it at lunch. But who has mentored you along the way?
Well, we're definitely a family panel up here. So my mom, who's actually here with me today. My mom's there.
Hi. Stand up so everybody can, come on, Mom.
It's my mom. So my mom and also my grandma, they both raised me. My mom was a single mom. I was definitely not an easy child. I'm hoping I'm a little bit easier adult, but I don't know, sometimes I'm not. But she definitely taught me to be strong, sometimes probably too strong, and determined and passionate about whatever you do, so thanks. Love you.
What value do you each bring, do you think, to your particular firms or industries? I'm asking as a woman, but then Keith, I'll let you say as a guy with a perspective. So what value do you think you bring to the beauty industry as a woman, Shannon?
Well, some of my team is here, maybe they can answer. Brittany. So I think for me, it's always not necessarily taking the underdog, but taking maybe somebody that isn't as, well-versed in whatever job they're doing, and kind of guiding and mentoring them and really motivating them to do whatever they want to do. If they want to move into a different path in their career, knowing that they can do it. You don't have to be schooled in it. You don't have to have, worked for 5 years doing it. But, we can do it, and we can do it together. And I think that was one of the things that my team always loved, is that they knew that they could come to me for advice and guidance, and, just being very motivating and to them.
Eileen, you're an investor
So, first of all,
but-
I want to mention, I'm here with Bridgewater, and I want everyone to notice that half the table's men, so thank you guys for showing up.
Yay, Bridgewater.
For me, so many people have given me so much. I grew up in a housing project up at the tip of Manhattan, and I've gotten so much from so many people. And over the last, I'd say, 15, 20 years, I want to give back. And so for me, what makes me feel really great is watching someone go from, one level of expertise to here. And so it's one thing to help women and help put people in good jobs, but you got to make them successful. And that requires development, that requires hard work, that requires back and forth. And I think people know me for that, but for me personally, it is such a great feeling to see someone succeed.
What do I bring? So, I would say, it starts as a founder with the vision of the company, but I think it's also as we've built out not just our cap table with a majority of female investors, but also, 65% of our employees are females too. So we've really, looked to build it up in a way that. And again, that's not just coming from me, but it's coming from, people who have been successful in this company. I think that the guys that are interviewing people in our company too are looking at, we've had lots of great success with women in this company. Let's take another closer look at those people as well, so.
Great. I think with our company, and, I represent my company, is we see money and currency as a current of life force, and we see scarcity as really abundance, and abundance as happiness, and our ability to transform our value chain agriculture in our world through happiness and love as a driving force, and letting that guide us every day.
As Nirvana-ish as it sounds, and we know there's still a lot of challenges here in the U.S., I know that at least Kara and Keith, you both have a lot of experience overseas. And can you talk a little bit about your role in trying to lift women up in the markets that you're serving or in the places that you've gone? I'll let you start, Keith.
Sure. What drives a lot of finance and the ability to move funds and capital is data. And at least in agriculture, it's been an informal industry. So there's not a lot of data behind the transactions. So using blockchain, distributed ledgers, as we can add more data to transactions, we could leverage our friends like over here to have more capital allocated to smaller farmers, women farmers, developing countries. So we feel like data could be a real driver in these areas in order to provide more support and more capital to what's happening there, and also greater access to markets. So if you're just a small farmer and you're selling into a packer who sells to a wholesaler, to a distributor, to a retailer, to a brand, and so on, as a consumer, you're very disconnected to who's actually creating your products. And so if we can try to make that connection more human, perhaps we can support the actual producer.
Are the women farmers, do you see a difference between the women that are in the agricultural community versus the men?
Generally speaking, I find that women understand creation. They create beings, right? So the way they approach agriculture in many instances is really connected with a more holistic and creation type of understanding of the farm, where the male mind can be very much like, apply this chemical and this chemical and this chemical. The women farmers I've gotten to know are way more holistic and are way more connected to Mother Earth, and in that feeling center to know that like the soil is very complex and it's tied in with the trees and the water and the astrology and everything else. So I find that women actually feel way deeper when it comes to agriculture.
Kara, internationally, can you talk a little bit about your
Yeah,
experiences?
I have two stories actually. One is, we were talking earlier before the panel, but we've been huge supporters of Whole Planet over the past few years. We funded much of what Whole Planet has been doing to do microloans, and I went over to Thailand and spent 3 weeks over there on the farm with some women and really wanted to understand, so Whole Foods, the majority of their microloans are actually given to women because women actually repay the loans, which is sort of top level. But then the other thing that's going on that I was really fascinated with was that these girls that are in communities in Thailand and just sort of on the border of Vietnam as well, where the rice farms are, they were typically married off at age 12, 13 years old. And now that the women are actually running, you know, the purse, essentially, they're saying, I need the help of my daughter, so keep my daughter here. So these communities are these whole towns, for the first time in years, actually have girls that are, you know, older than 13 years old, because they're not forced to leave. And so I wanted to go over and really understand, like, how did the guys feel about this? How did the dads feel? How did the, you know, older sons feel? And they were really, really excited to see that their sisters were staying. It wasn't like they wanted them to leave. They wanted them to be there. They just had been in this habit of sort of having this happen. So anyway, I think like that's one thing that I've been really excited about, the microloans. But the other thing is, I just got back from the UK last week and was working actually, the UK government asked a group of us to come over and sort of talk about what's happened in the US. It was a Silicon Valley meets UK agenda. But anyway, the thing that I thought was so interesting was that there aren't very many of these angel women's groups. In fact, like, no one could name an angel women's group in the UK, which I thought was fascinating. So ended up having a lot of discussions around that, and hopefully will provoke, you know, people to actually go do this.
Because I'm getting the signal, but I'm going to end it with this. One word. Why should anyone invest in women? I'm going to give you like 1 second to think about it. I'm going to say the future. That's 2 words, but future. One word. Why invest in women?
Economy.
Right thing to do.
Oh, more than one word.
Sorry.
Do it.
Confidence.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, panelists.